Good evening, everyone, and welcome back once again to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall, and my co-host here is Bill McIntyre. Just two guys discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, and then giving you our viewpoint and our opinion of those issues. We here at the We Are Marshall podcast would love for you to go check out all of our episodes and share them all over social media like we do. You can find each and every one of the episodes on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Storyful, and our channel is on the app similar to Yahoo called Rumble, which does not censor anyone, so we like that that media for our podcast just in case. We'd also love you to go to that Rumble channel and like, share, and subscribe. This way you'll get notified of any new content we have out there. Like I have an announcement today. I have just published my first book. It's on Amazon.com by Stephen Marshall, and it's called The Unforeseen Enemy. Check it out. It is available in ebook and in paperback, and you can purchase it right now. I have two others coming down the road that I will be publishing. They are called The Perception Therapist, will be the next one that I will show to you folks once that's done. Bill's got his blogging going on, and he also is a writer, so he's writing a book and some other short stories and things he will do that we may even collaborate on. So as you can see, it's a new year here at the We Are Marshall podcast, and Bill and I have a lot going on, a lot of things we want to do. So we're gonna get right into this. We are sponsored by MateConnector.com, a large dating website out there in the dating stratosphere that has all the bells and whistles of the big players in the market, but they are just much, much more cheaper than all these other big players. So check them out. Make your dating pursuit a little cheaper than some of these other players do it. As usual, we got a lot of content that we're going to jump into today. So I'm going to start off with the first episode, the first issue on this one, and that's why electric vehicles struggle in the extreme cold. So my issues today are going to be based around green initiatives, things like that I'm going to speak to you folks about, and Bill and I will dialogue about. But this cold electric vehicle issue, we're going to play a video for the first time for you, so you can see that we're upping our game here at the We Are Marshall podcast. So sit tight, watch what we have to say, and then Bill and I will jump right in and discuss this video. It takes about a minute and 45 seconds. Here we go.
Driving a car in the winter can be quite the headache, but electric vehicle owners are facing a whole new set of challenges as temperatures dip. The cold is affecting two crucial elements of the EV experience: the driving range and the charging speed.
I've been here for over 5 hours at this point.
And the reason for both comes down to their power source.
Lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion battery.
Lithium-ion battery.
Lithium-ion batteries. Like all other batteries, they run on chemical reactions, the movement of electrons and ions from one terminal of the battery to the other. Chemical reactions happen faster when it's hotter and slower when it's colder. And since some of the car's battery power in the winter is being redirected to maintain optimal battery temperature and heat the car cabin, your EV's driving range could be reduced by as much as 25%. The cold also affects the battery charge. Companies actually slow the charging speed of EVs, since charging your car when it's below freezing can make the battery unstable and more likely to fail. So much for bad news, but there is something that can be done. For one, taking fewer short trips. Each time an EV stops, it cools down and needs to be reheated when started up again. That drains the battery. Tesla also recommends keeping your car plugged in and retaining a minimum of 20% charge at all other times. And since warm batteries charge more easily, driving for at least 30 minutes before charging your car could speed up the process. Car companies are working on making electric vehicles more efficient in the winters. And in the end, perhaps what EVs lack in efficiency during cold spells, they make up for in environmental impact.
Okay. These hurdles that we just saw for electric cars are way off in improving the technology. There are so many factors that are at play here. We have other countries that pollute in a major way too, like China and India. They are both so large and have such a large population that they contribute to a larger majority of the pollution in the world today. Many things cannot be destroyed, such as lithium batteries and wind turbine fan parts. This just makes everything worse, in my opinion. It costs too much, and we are polluting in other ways. Also, let us be honest, electric cars need electricity, and much of the electricity in the world is coal burned power. Countries like China are increasing their coal burning capacity, and if they are not falling in line with the climate crisis, then the whole point is moot. Every country must participate in this endeavor if anyone wants it to work out. But if you paid attention to this video that we just ran, you see that it tells you you got a vehicle, you can only take short trips. So that eradicates you going anywhere long with your vehicle. Let's hope you don't work, 100 miles away from where you live, because then the electric vehicle is going to become moot, as we stated. And then there is like reheating. You got to reheat the car. They want you to drive the car 15 minutes before you charge it. I mean, that's okay if you're on your way home, you drove it home, that's fine. But you're going to tell me you got to get up in the morning, drive your car around the neighborhood, plug it in, and then charge it. I mean, it just doesn't make sense right now. And then they're saying that they want you to maintain a 20% charge while you have to charge it with reheating it, or it's going to run out quick. I mean, it's very convoluted in how these electric vehicles work. They do work, my friends. Don't get me wrong there. I'm not just killing it. But what I'm saying is, many things are not ready. Okay. They are much too expensive. There is still lots of waste. They don't even know what they can do with lithium batteries once they run out with the charging. They don't know what they can do with these wind turbine fans. They have to bury them in landfills. So if we're trying to move away from, you know, uh, things like coal and stuff like that to make the environment better, how is the environment getting better, Bill, if we have nowhere to dispose of the waste that we do utilize with green attempts? What do you think?
Well, I don't want to double up on some of the things you said, but of course, a couple of the points you made were the first things that come to my mind. Teslas are nice cars. In my detailing business, I actually clean quite a few of them. They're very nice vehicles. I actually have one family that has 3 electric vehicles. He has one of those new Rivian pickup trucks and 2 Teslas, and he's a major proponent of green energy. But he also lives in Florida. He spends his summers in New Hampshire. Okay. So he doesn't deal with the winter part. I know Florida occasionally is a cold day, but these are issues that I imagine are unforeseen. I imagine that the creators of the electric car knew that this was a possibility. You're talking about major inconveniences when you have an electric car in the winter climate, okay? But the major inconveniences are still the ones that always existed. And if I double up on things you said, I apologize, okay? So they talk about charging cars. Okay, well, if you have a garage and you own your own house and you can put a charging station in your garage, that's great. That's ideal. I don't want to speculate as to the amount of people in this country that do that, but I would think that more people live in apartment buildings or condos or park on the street or park in designated parking spaces that don't have chargers available. In that case, they're exposed to the weather. They're exposed to everything else that any other environmental condition any other person is. And that video illustrated, like, one guy, 5 hours. Can you imagine being at the gas station for 5 hours?
No, I mean
with a gas powered car, right?
Yeah,
I mean, think about that.
What we're talking about.
Yeah,
I mean,
so this guy's
you did bring up a good point. If you're in Florida, it's a little warmer. You might be fine, but still, guess what? When you do have to charge it, like you just said, you're going to be at a charging station for 4 to 5 hours. That's ludicrous.
Think about how many times you waited for 3 cars to fill up so you could get to a pump, okay? And how that felt like an eternity. 5 hours. I mean, that's a half a day for some people, okay? So that's a major inconvenience. So maybe that's the long shot. But charging stations are not everywhere. When it says don't take short trips, most people drive short trips. So people use their cars for short trips. We don't all get in the car with the intention of going 100 miles and more. We're going to the store. We're going to, the post office, something like that. So these things concern me. But I think to electric energy, I think that it's a good idea. I think that I have to repeat one thing you said because it's something I can't get past, is how people either don't believe or don't recognize the fact that they're still using fossil fuels just in a different way. Instead, now a big plant belching smoke into the environment is now powering their charging station, but they don't actually have to touch the gas, so they feel like they're not polluting. Okay, so whatever emissions they save on that end, the power plant more than makes up for, and the additional taxing on the power grid is cranking out to keep up with these things. And then the cost of creating lithium. I heard it's like 5,000 tons of earth have to be excavated. No, I'm sorry, 50 tons of earth have to be excavated with heavy equipment, belching smoke into the sky, diesel fumes, to get a 1,000-pound battery, enough lithium for one 1,000-pound battery. Okay, that's not sustainable. And on top of that, you have the issue of recycling the battery, like you said. I think the ultimate answer is the hybrid. I have no issue with the hybrid. The Prius, well, I had a little bit of fun with when they first came out. The Prius is essentially a gas-powered vehicle subsidized by electric. They're tremendously efficient. It was a good model. And green cars aren't working, as we've all seen. The government subsidies are falling through. A lot of companies are not doing well. Plants are closing. The auto strike was largely due to the Green Initiative. It's a good idea for some people, I think. But I don't think that the electric car is the answer. And I wish I had something more controversial, but yeah.
You don't have to, because the bottom line, that video laid out a lot. We discussed a lot, but the charging times are a big issue. Let's be real. And it's not the manufacturers that I have an issue with. They're trying to revolutionize an industry. Good for them. We love technology. We love capitalism thing. It's the government telling you have to do this by now, but it's not ready for you yet, but you better do it. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You're demanding that, well, I believe it's 2030 that California put a bill in that they won't sell any more gas combustion new cars. I mean, that's 6 years away, and we're talking about this stuff here. I mean,
California has the worst power grid in the country, which they lose power with rolling brownouts almost all the time. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't steal that from you.
Oh, that's okay. They do. I mean, here we got a state that can't even handle anything to do with the electricity grid. So why would we do that in a state that can't handle it? I mean,
you can't put air conditioners, and then you have the worst traffic in the country. Try to imagine the energy problems you're going to have with an entire highway blocked by Teslas with dead batteries.
Yeah. They just
can't push them either, by the way. You know that, right?
But no, you can't. But this is the thing with the Democrats, okay? This is the problem I have with them. I am an independent. We will reiterate that, but I want to say this. The Democrats have good ideas. They do. The ideology in many ways is sound. They want to help a lot of people and do right by people. But they don't know how to do it. They try to force it on you. We're not ready for certain things. They got to stop this. We are not ready. The electric car industry is not ready for a mass of the United States, most of the population, to be on electric cars. It is a good thought, and it is a good point to try to help the environment, but we're not ready. But I'm not going to keep going on this subject because I got a lot more in the end. We've already spent some time. We're going to give you your next segment, Bill. Jump right into that.
Well, I was just going to say one last thing about the other subject. The thing is, the Democrats with the good ideas, yes, but the scientific method, which you would always use, is always going to be applied. This is a good idea. Next question, is it feasible? You know, that they don't seem to really look at that. But the good segment,
that's what I'm getting at with everything. They got to figure out the feasibility, and they never do. But we'll move on to your first topic today. It's our second topic of the podcast here at the We Are Marshall podcast. And go ahead, Bill, hand that over to you for you to start that.
Excellent. Thank you. What we're looking at today is a very big story. Of course, it's related to Israel and Palestine, but it has more to do with the United Nations and how the United Nations is complexly intertwined with the Middle East situation, okay? The United Nations agency's alleged involvement in the October 7th terror attacks in Israel has led to widespread decisions to cut funding. So what you have here is you have the UNRWA, which is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. It's a fund specifically designed over 60 years ago for Palestinian refugees in the Near East. Okay, it provides assistance and protection of Palestinian refugees in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. The agency's budget is determined by the UN General Assembly and is primarily funded through voluntary contributions from the UN member states. A substantial portion of its financial support is derived from the regular UN budget, which the United States contributes overwhelmingly to, specifically earmarked for international staffing expenses, among other things. Well, there have been reports of countries backing out of funding this when it was revealed that dozens of employees of the agency, employees of the UN, were actually involved in the October 7th terror attacks. So in a massive response, many countries, 16 in total as of this count today, have pulled their funding. The United States is not using the word pulled, but now they are saying they're pausing the funding, which is kind of a weak, impotent reaction to this, because this is pretty bad, because you have to look at the management of a company when you fund that company. In this case, UN is a vendor, and this is a really bad look. So what happened is the United Kingdom, Canada, and other key Western powers have joined the United States in cutting funding to the United States relief and work agencies for Palestinian refugees in the Near East. In particular, these efforts right now are focused on Gaza and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. All right. 12 employees were accused of being involved. Unfortunately, it doesn't say exactly how they were involved, but they believe that information was leaked and there was just some covert participation in the attack within the agency. Overall, it's just completely unacceptable. CNN was the first to report this story, and then not showing the intelligence which the allegations were based, but they were strong enough that the countries reacted as they did. So Italy, Australia, and Switzerland joined the boycott this week, and we paused it. And 12 United. I'm sorry, I repeated that line by accident. The U.S. funding was supposed to resume, subject to an investigation from the United Nations. So UNWRA can read the Beltway press well enough to know that Congress is moving to cut off U.S. funding. Richard Goldberg, former National Security Council advisor during Trump administration, told Fox News Digital. This is a PR move designed to preempt congressional action. Does nothing to change the fact that UNRWA is complicit in Hamas war crimes. It remains a key obstacle to peace. But here's the thing. I'm going to sidestep to a different story here. The biggest story is that while Biden reinstated this funding, Donald Trump in 2018 was actually the one who ended the funding for this agency. It was a very controversial move, but widely considered to be the right one. And I feel it's necessary to offer all this information to get the context that's required for this story. So this story is from the Heritage Foundation. Yes, a largely conservative organization, but all the news articles I read had too much of a slant, while this one actually had the story. So I'm going to go with this one. In 2018, and I have to remind you as I read this article that's from 2018, last week the State Department announced that the Trump administration had concluded an internal review and decided to end all U.S. contributions to the UNRWA for Palestinian refugees in the Near East. Part of the administration's justification for the decision was the disproportionate level of U.S. financial support. Now, I remember that Donald Trump, one of his big acts was he went to the UN. He went to the G20. He told every major power that they would up their contributions to the UN to where it's supposed to be, which was 19% of their military budget. Okay, and Trump did it. Okay, they all paid up for the first time in this country's history. We were actually having proportional funding to the UN, but the United States still pays the lion's share. All right, so the disproportionate level of U.S. support. But the more fundamental reason to end the funding was with the many flaws that have plagued this particular agency for decades. And by decades, I mean since Palestine was founded in 1950. All right. The Israeli situation was created in 1950. Importantly, the U.S. had made clear that the decision to end funding does not mean it's abandoning the peace process or the Palestinian people. Quote, the United States will intensify dialogue with the United Nations, host governments, and international stakeholders about new models and approaches, which may include direct bilateral assistance from the U.S. and other partners that can provide today's Palestinian children the more durable and dependable path toward a brighter tomorrow. And then it says the U.S. will shift some of the agency funding to the government of Jordan and to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees to address the refugees at the time the Syrian conflict was going on when this article was written. We had a tremendous amount of refugees in that situation, okay? So they went on to say this decision is long overdue. And this is where Steve's going to get excited. The UNRWA has existed for more than 60 years as a temporary initiative to address the needs of Palestinian refugees from the 1948 Israeli-Arab conflict and to facilitate their resettlement or repatriation. It is evolved into a permanent institution providing services to multiple generations of Palestinians, quote unquote, refugees, of whom a large majority live outside of Palestine, enjoy citizenship in other countries, or reside in the Palestinian West Bank or Gaza Strip. Despite receiving ongoing assistance from the UNRWA, the Palestinian refugee problem has only grown larger. The agency was set up to address a temporary crisis involving over 600,000 refugees defined as persons whose normal place of residence was Palestine during the period 1 June 1946 to 15 May 1948, and who may have lost both home and means of livelihood as a result of the conflict. The refugee population expanded to 5.3 million individuals, depending upon this account, because the UNRWA redefined, which is what they do, change the wording, and expanding its definition of refugee. But the agency has made refugee status available to descendants of Palestine refugees males, including legally adopted children. And it classifies a Palestinian as a refugee even if he or she lives in the West Bank or in Gaza or even earns citizenship in another country. So imagine that. You move to Jordan, you still get a check from this organization. That is, and you might be living your best life, and they still get the check from this organization. That's just plain corruption. That's not consistent with the 1951 Convention or the policy of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. So substantial evidence indicates, and we're still on the 2018 article, substantial evidence indicates that the UNRWA has contributed to Palestinian extremism. For instance, the agency has and likely continues, again in 2018, to employ individuals affiliated with Hamas, a Palestinian Islamist extremist group in charge of Gaza. We know this. There have been frequent claims, backed by evidence, that Palestinian schools administered by the UNRWA have used textbooks that allow the presence of materials that delegitimize Israel, denigrate Jews, and venerate martyrdom. And they also say death to America. The UNRWA encouraged the Palestinian fixation on the right to return to Israel, which impedes negotiations for a permanent peace agreement. And Hamas has used the agency facilities and schools to store weapons and divert assistance to its purpose. This is why Donald Trump canceled it. Biden just brought it back. So the U.S. has been enormously generous to the UNRWA, providing with hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And the budget is now $6 billion. Which is almost half of what our total commitment to Israel has been, if you can imagine that. Unfortunately, that support did not bring the situation any closer to resolution. On the contrary, it cemented the status quo and absolved Palestinian leaders of the responsibility to provide health care, education, and other basic services that sovereign governments, which the Palestinians claim to have, are supposed to do. So contrary to the claims of the Palestinians, the U.S. is not violating international law because U.S. funding is voluntary. Palestinian leaders have rejected increasingly generous offers since the 1990s. This intransigence, encouraged by Iran and rejectionist Arab leaders, lies at the root of the Palestinian refugee problem, and it harms the Palestinian people. So the rationale for continuing the status quo will only ensure that the UNRWA and the conflict continues, and while it may likely cause short-term ramifications, the decision to defund this agency will hopefully force all parties to reevaluate their underlying assumptions and refocus attention on what's necessary to end this protracted dispute. End of article. That's really great stuff there. So now fast forward to the future. President Biden resumed the relationship right after taking office in his campaign to just undo everything that Trump did. He continued to increase spending and actually exceeded their other levels by another $1 billion. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant praised the U.S. decision as an important step in holding the UNRWA accountable. At least a dozen UNRWA employees participated in the horrific attack. They're humanitarian workers with salaries paid for by international donation, and they have blood on their hands, he said. So that's the story about the funding. I could go on, but the story is kind of tells itself. It is what it is. It's about. I think that it was important that I looked into a little further and found the Trump connection to it and realized that Trump's decision is considered to, in hindsight, to be the wise one. It's the equivalent of making your kids get a job and get out of the house someday. It's about, you can't create this complete dependency, and he wanted to legitimize the situation a little bit. So, I mean, what do you think, Steve?
Well, I mean, I did some stuff on this, and I did watch a lot on it today. And people need to understand the UNWRA is the arm within the Palestinian Gaza Strip, where they're going to disperse all the resources that we and other countries are giving to make life easier for the Palestinians when they're dealing with this war. Now, that being said, that means that Hamas is controlling the UNWRA. So that means that stuff, like we all suspected, is not going to those people.
This is the humanitarian money that they are hijacking and not giving to the people that need it. Yep. Yes,
it's going to Hamas, and it's just empowering Hamas to do more things. Now, if Hamas continues to keep the Palestinian people down and they need things, then the naivete of our people in the United States will say, oh, we need to give them more billions of dollars so that they're okay, because they think that that's going to get by Hamas. But it's not. This is a very bad thing that's going on. I do like what Trump had done on it. He probably made the right decision. But the bottom line on this is, even though he made the right decision, we all knew, it was talked by the media heads to the administration that this was going to happen. And here we are. They assured us it never would. But bottom line is, we have to eradicate these groups like Hamas to keep them away from these people, these organizations, because they will just continue to do it. But that's a good story, people. Bill, people need to pay attention to what Hamas's fingers are really in, so we can really get things done.
You're going to hear all these stories about how nobody's giving aid and all that, and there's always a finger, being pointed when these things happen. And, yes, there is a humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza, and I'm going to cover that in my next story. The fact is that the money is there, but it's tragically misappropriated. That's really the story to me.
Yep, that's the big part of the story. And like we said, they knew it, and they still let it happen. But good story. We'll be paying attention to all, like we have been, and saying what's going on in Gaza. We'll be paying attention what's going on in Israel and all these other hotbeds all over the world. But we're going to move on to our third issue of today, and it's going to keep my theme going of in the green or the, climate control type of things that these people think are going to change the climate and for a better way. And as you saw in the first story, that's not the case. But this next one is going to sum it up even more. This is 5 reasons that green growth will not save this planet. Okay? Green growth has emerged as the dominant narrative for tackling contemporary environmental problems. Its supporters, including the likes of the UN, ironically, there's the UN again, OECD, national governments, businesses, and even NGOs, non-governmental organizations, say that sustainability can be achieved through efficiency, technology, and market-led environmental action. Green growth suggests we really can have our cake and eat it, both growing the economy and protecting the planet. But when it comes to tackling the most pressing environmental problems, such as climate breakdown, species extinction, or resource depletion, green growth might weaken rather than strengthen the process. And here are 5 reasons why, and I'll sum them up. Growth trumps efficiency. And I didn't use the trump the way you people, but it does. Growth does trump the efficiency of the green initiative. In theory, advances in environmental efficiency can help to decouple economic growth from resource use and pollution. But such outcomes remain elusive in the real world. While sectors such as construction, agriculture, and transport have managed to create less pollution and use less resources per unit of output, these improvements have struggled to fully offset the scale and speed of economic growth. By outpacing the production improvements, economic growth has led to an unhampered rise in resource use, pollution, and waste. In fact, efficiency may even be fueling further consumption and pollution. This is a paradox first observed in 1865, my friends, by the economist William Stanley Jevons, who noticed the introduction of a more efficient steam engine actually coincided with more coal consumption, not less, as new profits were reinvested in extra production, causing prices to fall, demand to rise, and so on. Such rebound effects exist across the whole economy. So the only real solution is to consume less. At best, efficiency is a half-baked solution. At worst, it stokes the very problem it tries to address. Do experts have something to add to public debate? We think so. So another thing that will get in the way is overstated technology. What did we just talk about? Overstated technology, the electric vehicles. So proponents of green growth want us to believe that ever better technology is the solution. However, we are not so sure. International environmental agreements and scenarios codify, assume large-scale technologies will be deployed to capture and store carbon emissions. But we have yet to witness their potential, even on a small scale. Mechanized agriculture is being promoted on the basis of increased efficiency and yield, while overlooking the fact that low tech farming is a more productive means of meeting global food demand at lower environmental costs. Okay, now number 3 is pretty much what this country is based upon. No profit, no action. So perhaps the most compelling argument put forward for green growth is that protecting the environment can go hand in hand with making profits. However, in reality, there is often a tension between those goals. Many firms are risk averse, for instance, and don't want to be first movers, whether on charging for plastic bags, banning plastic cups, or introducing carbon labeling. Then you have the fact that some sustainable interventions are simply not attractive investments for the private sector. There is little profit to be made in conserving ecosystems or financing public infrastructure for electric vehicles. Meanwhile, environmental risks like natural resource depletion or extreme weather might become increasingly attractive to part of the private sector. If we're serious about living within environmental limits, we need to say adios to certain sectors: fossil fuels, livestock, and fertilizers. If we leave that to the market, we're going to be waiting a long, long time, as we've discussed. Now, number 4 is green consumption is still consumption, okay? Buying green offers a seemingly common sense solution to the environmental ills of overconsumption, but we're skeptical. The push for greener consumption has devolved responsibility from governments and business to ordinary people like us, what we were just talking about, the forcing of electric vehicles. As one commentator put it, we have been conned into fighting environmental issues as individuals, while the real culprits get off scot-free. Eco-friendly stuff is still made of stuff. Indeed, the very act of green consumption still fuels the extraction and use of natural resources, pollution, and environmental degradation. Stuff requires more stuff to produce. This is often overlooked when we buy reusable cups, eco appliances, and sustainable clothing. Any positive impacts of green consumption can also easily be done through people feeling they have a moral license to indulge elsewhere. Green consumption is a zero-sum game. If we decide to go vegan, then fly long haul, while it's misguided to think consumers can't make a difference, we shouldn't be fooled into thinking humanity can consume its way out of environmental problems. Now, number 5 is the danger of guesswork. And that's what they're getting into now by telling California you need to be only manufacturing EV vehicles as of 2030. So a central principle of green growth is that markets are both part of the problem and the solution. Proponents of green growth argue that as long as we get the numbers right, a tax on carbon, a clean energy subsidy, or a price tag on nature, markets can foster sustainability. But tackling environmental problems through the market involves a lot of guesswork with no guaranteed outcome. Unlike carbon, ecosystems and biodiversity are not amenable to economic valuation and substitution within markets. Pricing environmental damage in markets is like selling permits to pollute and trash our natural world. Although market mechanisms can guide business towards sustainable behavior, only stringent laws and regulation can help bring their growth in line with environmental limits. Beyond green growth, efficiency alone is a blunt tool, and techno fixes will also not get us where we need to be. We need to address the elephant in the room: consumption. As the business case for reducing consumption is poor, governments and communities need to take charge. There are promising signs. The next major intergovernmental panel on climate change assessment report will finally include a chapter on tackling consumption. In the UK, the Committee on Climate Change's report on net zero by 2050 highlights the critical need for societal change. Questioning our appetite for growth is the first step towards a more inclusive and effective model for sustainability. Now, let's just focus on one thing, Bill: consumption. Okay? The mathematical equation for consumption is going to go in what direction no matter what from this point on? It's going to go up.
It's going to go up. As the population increases, so does consumption.
Exactly. The population increases. We get more kids driving cars on the roads. You got more electricity being used because there's more people. You got more coal being burned. I mean, the bottom line is consumption is the main thing, but how do you tell people individually to consume less? Okay, you look at the United States, we have the most obese society. We're definitively not consuming less than the rest of the world when it comes to basic staples of food and things like that. But when we look at this in totality, the population is just going to continue to grow. It's going to put more people to work. They're going to be in industries that pollute. They're going to be driving cars. There's going to be a number of things. There's going to be waste that's going to be thrown away that continues to grow because of this. So consumption, I don't see being the problem. I mean, being the solution, because we're not going to get there. But I do see what they mean by it is the major problem. What say you, Bill?
Well, I've got a controversial thing to add here, but the biggest problem this planet has is just too many people. Okay, Bill Burr comically always does in his routine that an article about how 50% of us or 85% of us have to go, and it cracks me up when he does that. But he's only being half. He's only half joking. He really believes that. And the fact is that yes, we have a major population issue. This country, the birth rates among Caucasians are way down, but every other ethnic group in this country is still growing like crazy, and we're accepting 12 million immigrants in the last couple of years. That's certainly not going to help anything either. The problem we're having here is that we can't be the only ones in the world that limit our consumption. Okay, you have rampant consumerism. Okay, in this country, Americans have always been about stuff. George Carlin famously made a routine about a place for my stuff. You know, your house is a place for hold your stuff while you go out and get more stuff. And it was hilarious, but it wasn't, because it was true. We have to have two of everything. We have to have the latest of everything. We have to have the newest version of everything. We have to throw away perfectly good thing to get the latest version. We have to, and on top of that, everybody else have a second home. So we're clearing land, and we're taking down trees that could contribute to oxygen levels in the world and all that. So individually, yes, we can all make an effort to curb our consumption. I mean, like there are states that are taking action against single-use plastic bottles. You can't buy a bottle of water in the store anymore in some places, which is bad for business, maybe good for the environment. Hard to say. But the fact is, if the rest of the world is going to continue on the rampant pace that they are with pollution and population and everything else, then the 2 mile stretch of plastic floating in the Pacific Ocean is going to be 4 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles. Not going to be able to do anything about it. And it's all because, we have this notion that we can somehow save the earth. Now, I think you and I differ, Steve. We talked about this. You're not as concerned about the environment as I am. And I'm not a tree hugger by any means, but I manage my own footprint, okay? And I'm very concerned about pollution, and I think that a lot of what we do is avoidable, all right? So plastic water bottles and all that stuff, something I try to minimize. I try to carry a refillable bottle. It's a stupid thing. try to watch how much I drive and things like that to avoid excess CO2 and all that. But the planet is changing. The planet and the climate has been changing since the day the planet was incepted, or whatever the word is, conceived, if you will, however it came about. We are always been taught we could go through a second ice age. These things happen. The planet is changing. Now, are humans contributing to it? Most likely. But here's the thing. The political narrative is that we can save it, which is a money-grabbing scheme. That's all it is. All this green initiative is a money-grabbing scheme. It's a way for the government to impose different regulations that help certain people, usually their friends, hurts businesses, and it helps friends of presidents and congressmen and senators getting grants for solar panels and things like that. I think that being environmentally conscious is a good idea, but I don't think we're on the right track. So that's what I have to say about that.
Well, a couple things. One, I completely disagree that there's too many people on the planet. I mean, you can literally take every single person on this planet and they would fit in the state of Texas. Just the state of Texas. So that's
Okay.
that to me is not you, Bill Burr, saying that I love him, he's funny, but ridiculous.
No, I'm saying it too. I'm not just voicing Bill Burr's comedic,
and that's fine. I respect your opinion, but I fully disagree on that issue.
That's fine.
The bottom line is everything is cyclical. Every single thing in life is cyclical. Okay, the planet's climate is cyclical, like you just said. We had an ice age. Yeah. It's been really hot here. There's been things. The Earth goes through its own changes. We are merely a blip in this planet. Okay, we are sending stuff that is affecting the planet, but on such low scale, I don't think it's something to worry about right now. And I'm a true believer. I'm a big technologist, okay? I do believe in time, all of these negative aspects will be eradicated with some technology. But my whole gist of this whole green thing today was, we're not ready. The government's forcing it upon us like they force many things. And then the Democrats, they just don't have anything to run on anymore, Bill. So they start to create things like this. It is a money grab. I read an article. I tried to locate it now, but I read it literally. I believe it was I was like 28. So we're looking at about 1998-ish, okay? And around that time, that's a long time ago, right? Sure. I read an article in Business Week. And at the time, the guy that was in this article was tasked to go to a ski resort in Vail in Colorado and turn it all into green, the whole place. Well, he did it. He turned the whole place green. So the place was self-sustainable. And we'd sit there and say, that's wonderful. That's great. The ski resort went bankrupt. Okay, it's unsustainable financially at this time. Good ideas, again, by the Democrats, but not ready to implement on a large scale. So stop pushing it on us and stop regulating things. Let's just live and let technology to continue to evolve. And that's all I got to say on that, Bill. Let's jump right into your next topic.
Well, I want to actually offer one last comment. If you don't want to offer another comment?
Nope, I'm going to move on. Go ahead. Topic 4, go on to your next topic. Trying to keep the time rolling.
All right. UN's top court allows Israel to keep fighting in Gaza, but was it to adhere to the Genocide Convention? So the United Nations has a top court, and they responded to a South African inquiry which accuses Israel of genocide for its ground invasion and campaign inside Gaza against Hamas. In the ruling, the International Court of Justice refused to order Israel to halt its military operations in Gaza, but said that the Israeli military must take all steps to prevent civilian deaths and remain in adherence with the Genocide Convention. ICJ President Joan E. Donoghue, who read out the highly anticipated decision, said Israel must continue to let in aid to Gaza while seeking more opportunities to help Palestinian civilians. Israel's commitment to international law is unwavering. Equally unwavering is our sacred commitment to continue to defend our country and defend our people, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in response to the preliminary ruling. Like every country, Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state, and it was justly rejected. According to the Dutch newspaper De Telegraaf, the ICJ ordered Hamas to immediately free all the remaining hostages. It is not immediately clear whether Hamas will comply. The court also gave Israel 1 month to provide the ICJ with a plan to ensure prevention of deaths in Gaza. Lastly, the court confirmed that it has jurisdiction over South Africa's genocide case against Israel and will allow it to continue. The case is likely to take years before the 17 judges on the panel make a final decision. Israel has vehemently denied that its campaign in Gaza, where it is seeking to eradicate the Hamas terror group, amounts to genocide, and has asked the court to throw the case out. Netanyahu reiterated those comments on Friday. The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous, and decent people everywhere should reject it, the Prime Minister said. On the eve of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I again pledge as Prime Minister of Israel, never again. Israel will continue to defend itself against Hamas, a genocidal terror organization. And he added, on October 7th, Hamas perpetrated the most horrific atrocities against the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and it vows to repeat these atrocities again and again and again. Our war is against Hamas terrorists, not against Palestinian civilians. We will continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance and to do our utmost to keep civilians out of harm's way, even as Hamas uses civilians as human shields. That's something we need to highlight and make sure we go back to here. We will continue to do it what is necessary to defend our country and defend our people. Anne Bayevsky, director of the Turo Institute on Human Rights and the Holocaust, told Fox News Digital that Friday's ruling reflected the latest effort by the UN to undermine Israel. Hamas has congratulated the court on its decision. That tells you a lot, she said. The UN court relied entirely on allegations from the rest of the United Nations. It turned itself into an echo chamber of the UN's political mob. It relied on a Secretary General who claimed a mere 2 days after October 7th that the worst atrocities committed against Jews since the Holocaust had to be contextualized. So this case was an extension of the massive UN effort from the very start to undermine the ability of Israel to exercise its right of self-defense against Hamas's genocide targeting Jews. It turns logic, reason, and justice on its head, Bayevsky continued. One stark example, the court quotes the UN number that there are 25,000 killed in Gaza without saying that the source of that number is Hamas, the genocidal terrorist organization itself, or that a huge proportion of those killed are the terrorists themselves. Remember that the UN has no definition of terrorism because the controlling majority doesn't think butchering Israelis is terrorism. And when those who commit genocide can pervert the law to serve the genocidal ends, every decent human being loses. The court had a number of ways to refuse to entertain South Africa's desecration of law and morality, period, and chose not to do so, she argued. So ahead of Friday's ruling, an Israeli official told the Associated Press that Israeli officials were prepared for all scenarios. And Netanyahu joined top legal, diplomatic, and security officials on Thursday to discuss the ruling. He also met with his war counsel later in the day. Israeli government spokesperson Eylon Levy has said that Israel expects the court to toss the case before reaching a verdict. We expect the ICJ to throw out these spurious and specious charges. In its case filing, South Africa claimed that the high death toll among Palestinians in Gaza and the intensity of Israel's war in Gaza amounts to genocide, and asked the judges to issue the preliminary hearing as a matter of extreme urgency. So South Africa also requested the court to order Israel to immediately suspend its military operations in and against Gaza. And on Thursday, South Africa's foreign ministry said it was seeking an interim ruling from the court that Israel immediately cease its operation in Gaza, take reasonable measures to prevent the genocide of Palestinians, and ensure that displaced return to their homes and have access to humanitarian assistance, including food, water, fuel, medical, and hygiene supplies, shelter, and clothing. Israel first invaded Gaza after Hamas attacked them on October 7th, and according to the health ministry, more than 26,000 Palestinians have been killed during the war. This ministry, which is run by Hamas, does not differentiate between combatants and civilians in its death toll. So this story is a pretty face value story. The entire world is looking at the numbers of Palestinians displaced or killed, and they're not remembering or taking seriously what happened to Israel, denying its right to defend itself, and hoping for an end to a war that Israel stated very clearly when it started was going to take as long as it's going to take. Okay, so I looked up the numbers, and 26,000 is consistent as far as the death toll in Gaza, in the West Bank, and it's disturbing. And I don't in any way want to come down and take one side only or a side at all and say that the Israelis are right or wrong in how they're doing it. But we do have to acknowledge the things that we've talked about before here, which is the Israeli army is the most humane military in the entire world. The efforts that they make to warn people to get out of the way before they take out a target, and the fact that Hamas has been deliberately hiding civilians on top of military targets. I don't know how else Israel can conduct this war. They have to resign themselves to the moral dilemma that it's created by taking out innocent people to achieve their objective. But let's face it, if they stop, there's a 100% likelihood this is going to start up again. So, the word genocide, when you accuse Israel of genocide of people who are pretty clear on the meaning of what that word is, they know what a genocide is.
Yeah.
That's a pretty brazen statement. And that's what I like about the UN. You can take a country without any significant political influence or any kind of overall what's what I'm looking for, relevance on the world stage, like South Africa. I'm not saying they're not a good country and they don't contribute in any way, but they're not a major country or a world power that we look to for advice on how to handle our affairs. Can have such a voice and can make such an allegation and force Israel to go back on their heels and evaluate how they're conducting a war that most people would agree, except for apparently within the United States educational system, as a just war. It's tragic. It's humanitarian speaking. It's awful. Who wasn't killed have been removed. They're living in refugee camps under horrible conditions, but the people that are guiding them are a political terrorist organization. They're being led by Hamas. Hamas has no interest in taking care of the Palestinian people. They have interest in promoting their agenda. So, thoughts?
Well, Israel's process of war needs to be stated here vigorously. Okay, if they're going to bomb somewhere near a building, they call the building and tell the people, we're going to bomb that building. You need to get out of there. So they're warning them. Yes, it sucks. They're going to lose their house, but what are they supposed to do when Hamas is hiding under the building or in the building or whatever? Okay,
that's a conundrum.
Then they have this device that they can drop on a building, which warns everybody in the building that building's about to get bombed. You need to get the hell out of there, and they do, and then they do it. Then they're trying to, bottom line is war is awful, and there was a statistic you had stated in there, and it was even conceded by the article. I don't, maybe you missed it. I don't know. It stated in there that the majority of those 26,000 were Hamas people.
Yeah, it did say that, yeah.
Well, then how is this tragic? It's not. That's actually great. They're killing them. I don't understand. And this whole thing is just ridiculous. The big thing to me was your first story, Bill, that UNWRA. That's huge to know that there were people that work for them participated in the October 7th massacre. And then they're also probably giving the Hamas all kinds of ideas. This equipment's going there, food's going. It's terrible.
Oh, yeah.
They're so corrupt in these places, and that's one thing. Like, I'm not a big Trump fan, but I will say when he did come after the UN and said that every other country had to pay their own fair share, I was finally glad for that, and that was something we needed. But again, another good story. Let's real briefly jump right into your next segment so we can find a little bit more about this day in history on the We Are Marshall podcast. Go right ahead.
Well, just a small story.
Yeah.
On this day in 1933, a really unknown little man named Adolf Hitler was named Chancellor of Germany. So, let's stay with the whole Jewish Holocaust thing. Yeah. On January 30th, 1933, President Paul von Hindenburg names Adolf Hitler leader or Führer of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party, as Chancellor. The year 1932 had seen Hitler's meteoric rise to prominence in Germany, spurred largely by the German people's frustration with dismal economic conditions and the still festering wounds inflicted by defeat in the Great War, World War I, and the unacceptable terms of surrender that they faced on the Versailles Treaty. A charismatic speaker, Hitler channeled popular discontent with the post-war Weimar government and insisted support for his fledgling Nazi party. In an election held in July 1932, the Nazis won 230 governmental seats, together with the Communists, the next largest party, and they made up over half of the Reichstag. So Hindenburg, intimidated by Hitler's growing popularity and the thuggish nature of his cadre of supporters, by that he means they were going around beating people up or weren't going to vote for them, the SA, or brown shirts, initially refused to make him chancellor. Instead, he appointed General Kurt von Schleicher, who attempted to steal Hitler's thunder by negotiating with a dissident Nazi faction. At the next round of elections in November, however, the Nazis lost ground, but the communists gained it, a paradoxical effect of Schleicher's efforts that made right-wing forces in Germany even more determined to get Hitler into power. And in a series of complicated negotiations, ex-Chancellor Franz von Papen, backed by prominent German businessmen and the conservative German National People's Party, convinced Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as chancellor, with the understanding that von Papen as vice-chancellor and other Nazis in key government positions would contain and temper Hitler's more brutal tendencies. And we all know how that worked out. Hitler's emergence as chancellor on January 30th, 1933, marked a crucial turning point for Germany and ultimately for the world. His plan, embraced by much of the German population, was to do away with politics, make Germany a powerful, unified, one-party state. And he began immediately ordering a rapid extension of the state police, otherwise known as the Gestapo, and putting Hermann Goering in charge of a new security force composed entirely of Nazis and dedicated to stamping out any and whatever opposition to his party might arise. And from that moment on, Nazi Germany was off and running, and there was little Hindenburg or von Papen or anyone could do to stop it. Doesn't really require a lot of commentary, does it, Steve?
No, I mean, this day in history is good. This is a subject I'm very schooled on. It's just something good for our people to hear what this day is. Obviously, we all know that Hitler was a lunatic and very, evil. And Goebbels, we've discussed this many times. I've read the biography of Goebbels, who was the PR wing of the Nazis. And it's just an interesting correlation to some of the things that actually go on today. They continue to call like Trump Hitler. I mean, the correlation isn't even grossly close. No. It's disgusting to say. And we always, the Democrats are one to always turn the cheek, and they're supposed to say, you're supposed to look at someone, their virtues. Well, they don't do it anymore. They're calling this guy one of the most heinous individuals to ever walk the planet, if he's not. I mean, they may Genghis Khan maybe up there with him.
Well, actually, he's fourth on the all-time kill list. We have Mao Zedong, we have Pol Pot, and we have Joseph Stalin, who actually murdered more than Hitler did, but he seems to be the benchmark for evil.
Yeah.
But our political system, they have no sense of history, Steve. Even Antifa or Antifa, whatever they call themselves, which stands for anti-fascist. Well, their methods are designed to squash your opinion if you don't agree with them, which is the textbook definition of fascism.
But as Christopher Wray,
stupid.
As Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, would say, Antifa is only an idea. They exist. Yeah. We see them out there. It's just ludicrous. But
so an idea was throwing urine on people and hitting them with wiffle ball bats? Okay, good.
Good subjects again. Now we're at the end of the podcast. I always end the podcast with a feel-good story, a technological breakthrough, or a healthcare breakthrough. Today I found a nice healthcare breakthrough on the We Are Marshall podcast that I'd like to share with you. And this one is, they now have created a test that can spot 18 early-stage cancer signals, and it shows an 84% sensitivity in its first human trial. That's amazing. The first one, you're almost at 85%. An experimental cancer test already being studied in humans shows that by examining blood proteins instead of tumor DNA, it may be possible to detect up to 18 new ones. Bottom line on that is, if we're able to locate 18 earmarked proteins that are in our body, that would be able to eradicate lots of cancers and be able to do some. But they can detect, like I said, 18 early stage cancers with exceptional accuracy. Cancer tests don't often use the same methods of detection, and having one or two unified testing options would likely save thousands of lives. A U.S. biotech firm called Novel Na recently presented their findings of a trial of 440 humans with a total of 18 different cancers. Blood plasma samples were taken from each patient, along with 44 healthy blood donors. By analyzing trace proteins in the blood, the Novel Na team were able to achieve a high sensitivity or the detection rate of early stage tumors and a high specificity or the control of false positives. Furthermore, the proteins controlled for in the test are sex specific. At stage 1, the earliest cancer stage, and at the specificity of 99%, the panels were able to identify 93% of cancers among males and 84% of cancers among females. This finding is the foundation for a multi cancer screening test for the early detection of 18 solid tumors that cover all major human organs of origin for such cancers at the earliest stage of their development with high accuracy, the authors wrote in the journal BMJ Oncology. These findings paved the way for a cost-effective, highly accurate, multi-cancer screening test that can be implemented on a population-wide scale. That's big. The team acknowledged the small trial size and admitted that larger trials would be needed to confirm the accuracy already established. But they also highlighted that almost all of the proteins for almost all of the cancers were present in the blood samples at very low levels, indicating the importance of such tests for catching tumors before they form. If the assay performance in future well-designed sequential studies is anywhere close to what this preliminary study suggests, then it could really be a game changer, Dr. Manjesh Thorat of the Center for Cancer Prevention at the Wolfson Institute of Preventive Medicine told The Guardian. He was not involved in the study. Dr. Peter Attia, the well-known MD science communicator and proponent of Medicine 3.0, which places strong emphasis on prevention over treatment, said recently that in order to truly bring down mortality levels of common cancers like breast, colon, and prostate cancer, early test detection should start in midlife as often as twice a year. Indeed, the rate of survival for women who catch breast cancer in its earliest stages is in the 19th percentile. The 19th. Well, for those who catch it at stage 4, it's very low. Tests that would cover a variety of cancers at early stages could facilitate wider testing regimens around the world, where cancer is now responsible for 1 out of every 6 deaths. Now, think of the ramifications of that. They now have a test that's almost to the point that they can just mass test the whole population of the U.S. Okay? Think of what that will do. They'll find cancers in people all over the country, and then they're going to be able to utilize that data to find out how they got it, where it's coming from, and how to prevent it. This is going to be fantastic, Bill, along with a number of the things that I've been bringing forward on cancer. Yeah. So what do you say? We know you love these health breakthroughs.
I do, and I like telling people that, and when I run into them, if something like this comes up, a conversation about the breakthroughs being made, because people don't know about this stuff, Steve. I don't even know where you find these stories, but I think that there's a feeling of despair associated with cancer. It was the hardest word I ever had to say when I was diagnosed. Just hearing it, it has an effect on you because it implies, I'm sorry, but it implies death.
Yes.
And while people do survive cancer, my form was actually highly survivable. Didn't make the diagnosis any less easy, but it worked out. It was 25 years ago. But the thing is that you now have a possibility to relabel the whole experience when a cancer diagnosis happens, and say higher probabilities of success and things like you're going to make it. Like my really good friend, his wife has a terribly aggressive form of cancer with a very low survival rate. Doctor used the words "will be cured." They did so well in the surgery and with the treatment regimen they're going to give her that they actually used the word "will be cured." And they were very encouraged by that. I hope it wasn't irresponsible and premature, but still, that's something you want to hear. You don't want to hear "we'll see" or whatever. I mean, you take this empirical data and you find all the commonalities in proteins and lifestyle and environment and all that. You're not only going to be able to catch it early, you might even be able to prevent it.
In combination with artificial intelligence and all that empirical data, like you just said. We're in a great time, and this is what I'm trying to tell people as we go. And I'm ending the podcast on an awful disease, cancer, that my mom and my dad were lost their lives because of, and I wish things like this were around when they were running into their issues. It would have been great. But I'm glad that I can provide this information for people that may be dealing with it, and hopefully you pay attention and you inquire. So that's the end of the podcast.
Maybe you're giving somebody hope, Steve.
Yep. If you have any questions or issues, you can reach me, Steve at wearemarshallpodcast.com, and you can reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com. We'd love for you to go to all of our social media on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Storyful, and share all of our episodes all over social media. And also check out where our channel is populated on Rumble, which is an application similar to Yahoo, but they're more loose on censoring. They let you get your message out there. They are a freedom of speech application, so do join them. They are free, and check out the We Are Marshall podcast there and follow and subscribe so you get notification of our new content and the new things that we're doing, such as myself. I just published this book called The Unforeseen Enemy. It's now available on Amazon in ebook and paperback. Check it out. Maybe one of these episodes I'll read some excerpts from it so you can see what it's about. But do go check it out. Give me a review. Buy it. Do what you got to do. And Bill's doing a lot of things. We're going to check out his as soon as we get. And the website is almost done. We'll be putting that up, and that's going to have a culmination of everything we do together on there for you to see and interject any of your comments on. But go also... our sponsor, Mate Connector, has been good to us. We'd love for you to be good for them. Go check out their website, mateconnector.com. It's a large dating website in the dating stratosphere that is much, much more inexpensive than the big players. It'll cost you less out there in the dating world. Go check them out, support them. And we'll be back on Thursday. We have a good podcast coming to you. We may be another one, but this one is going to be, we're going to educate you on the Masons. Bill is a Mason, and we're going to educate you with two of his Mason buddies, and I am not a Mason, but I am going to learn myself and discuss this with them. So if we see you tomorrow, great. If not, we'll see you on Thursday with the Mason podcast. Everyone have a good night, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good evening.
Good night. I'm showing it's 99 uploaded. All right.